Welcome. This is the Trading Pit, your home for sophisticated takes on the crypto markets. It's June 6th, and here in the studio is JJ and Benjamin of JLabs. I am your host, Marconi White, and man, it's going to be a crazy couple of weeks. Outside forces continue to weaken. Bitcoin looks primed for a breakout. So the question is, how soon will Bitcoin hit 100,000 in 2024? That's what's on my mind. But first, it's rapid fire, where I look for simple answers to complex questions. Let's get these guys revved up. Benjamin, you're in the hot seat. Are you ready? Okay, that's the enthusiasm I wanted. All right. Benjamin, you get the first question. Yesterday, Jim Cramer said it's time to clean up the rogue crypto coins. They make a mockery of the process. And this came out when he was interviewing SEC Chair Gary Gensler. Question is the SEC the right place to start cleaning up?
Yes, SEC should clean it up. They should start with the coin called USD.
Oh, coming after King Dollar, man, coming in hot. I like to see that enthusiasm. Okay, Gary, if you ever want to talk about how to clean up the US dollar, Benjamin's got, you can come on this show. Benjamin's got some ideas.
I mean, the boxing match is still pending. I'm happy to.
Hey, are you still offering up? I've seen the pictures. You look stronger than Ansem. I'm just going to say it. JJ, BlackRock and Citadel plan to launch a competitor to the NYSE in Texas. Is this a brilliant move or just pure hubris?
I think it's a good move. Competition breeds innovation. So the NYSE has had a monopoly on that for quite a bit. And I don't think there's anything bad that could come out of opening up the gates for more competition there. It's not working well now, right? Like we see kind of the cracks in the system starting to show. So I think it could use some fresh blood.
Do you think they chose Texas because it's the home of the Longhorns? So it's just inherently bullish?
Yeah, that's it.
That was it. That was how they chose the map. Okay. For all those who don't know, if you live outside the United States, Longhorns are some of the most amazing cows in the world, and they love Texas. Benjamin, Arthur Hayes says, summer has been more excited than expected. Is sell in May dead?
I'm also starting to have conflicting thoughts about sell in May, but I still wouldn't call it dead yet.
Okay. So it's on life support, but it's not quite dead. That's what you're going with.
It's very close to getting invalidated, but
okay. Well, we'll see if you got to bring out the whatever those things are. We shock the person back to life. We'll see if that matters. JJ, Van Eck posts targets of $360 to $154,000 for ETH by 2030. Gosh, thoughts?
What? Somebody got paid for that? It's just kind of well, it could go up by a factor of whatever, 150, or down by 90%. That's not really much analysis. I don't know what to do with that information.
I really hope they got a crypto influencer to just write up some numbers. Or maybe they just got a baby that just
like, how do you even come up with those numbers?
A crypto influencer will never write such numbers.
Yeah.
It is always DXY who will write those numbers.
It's too low. It's too low.
Could go up, could go down.
Could go
within a 10-year time span.
Well, that's that's what I tell my wife when she asks about the portfolio. So I get it. Maybe Van Eck is married. Benjamin, Taylor Swift, should she start an ETH-based company to compete with MicroStrategy and call it Modular Swift?
Yes.
Do
it. Launch it on Base.
Launch it on Base. Oh, your home for all the favorite memes.
She can sell futures against her concert revenue.
That's exactly it. I read that and I thought, brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a good business model.
And I, as I put it out there, if she could do that and she could use the profits to write some better music, I would finally be a Swiftie. All right, JJ, last one here.
She'll be able to buy a few countries if she does that.
You know what? That's fine. Buying land is great, but writing good music that hits the soul, that's what matters, Benjamin. We have souls here. JJ, last question. Iggy Azalea's token hits 133 million market cap, while Jenner is stuck at just 6.4 million. Is crypto ageist?
No comment there.
You could ask if they're sexist, but again, another place we are not going to go today. All right, guys, we're going to unpack the market. We're going to ask the question, when does Bitcoin hit 100,000 in 2024? Really looking for what it would actually take to get there. Before I do it, I want to give a shout out to Light Signatures, Guat Preet, Paul J, Josie Navidic, Adrian, JV, Herschel, Thomas, G-Man, I369. Welcome, welcome. Love to see all you. Hit the like, subscribe, notification bell so you're always here. Every Tuesday and Thursday, you can hear the breakdown from these brilliant gentlemen who are just going to start doing that right now. So, JJ, I'm looking at the numbers here. We're talking about sell in May and go away, but man, these ETFs are calling me back. I saw it was over 1.2 billion in inflows just this week in the last 2 days. Bitcoin is sitting at 71,000. Last I checked, Ethereum at 3,800. Sol hanging on $173. Maybe they have a Van Eck quote there. What's your take here? I mean, we keep on expecting this breakout, but we're not seeing it. Outside forces look weak. What's going on?
Schrodinger's breakout, right? If everybody's waiting for it, it's not going to happen. So it's kind of like a watch pot, never boils thing right now, but it's looking good. And what did we say on Tuesday? That it was kind of on a shot clock to break above 70K. And we got that. And now we're consolidating below the resistance level at 72K. So if we look at that, we see there's pretty massive sell walls stacked up here right above the current range on basically every major order book of a lot of people wanting 72K fills. Whether or not they actually want them, who knows? It could just be spoofing, kind of suppressing price while they continue to fill the spot bids. As we've seen over the past couple of days, the ETF inflows have been massive, right? So that's definitely a good sign. We're still waiting on Dixie to lose that 104 level. Feels like that's what the market wants to really make that higher breakout and move past all-time highs. It's probably going to take until after FOMC next week, I would imagine, until we really see some decision there on Dixie. But all signs are looking good. Like there's no denying that this is a bullish setup right now. And the further out you zoom, you see here on the daily chart, it's expanding beyond the Bollinger Band here. Whether or not it actually breaks out in the coming days, who knows? But it's a good sign, right? It's looking increasingly bullish. We look at the monthly or the weekly. This is even more bullish. It looks like it's going to teleport straight to 80K when the time is right. But it's, once again, it's a watch pot, never boils things. So don't be over leveraging yourself here, given the macro events coming up over the course of the next couple of days and week as we head into FOMC and CPI next week. There's definitely going to be some turbulence. You'll probably see a large liquidation run at some point. That may be your best chance for entry if you're currently sidelined.
So everything from a technical perspective looks just super bullish.
If you're holding spot right now, it's perfect, right? Like it's just kind of this slow grind up. And we know how Bitcoin typically works is it does these slow grinds up and then that leads to a parabola, but it's timing the parabola. That's the most difficult part.
The parabola. I like that one. I haven't heard it put that way. We're gonna call that a JJ-ism. I want to come back to Benjamin and ask you a question about some information that's making you a little bit nervous about the sell in May and go away mindset and also this breakout. JJ, also I guess the question I want to come back to you is, is there any other information that you're looking at right now that gives you a little bit of pause? But Benjamin, I want to start with you because we were talking offline before the show, and I was joking with you, is it sell in May go away? And you said, I just can't give that up. And you were saying some of the volumes aren't very convincing. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, for example, when we look at order flows, even if it is just on Binance Spot, right? It is very muted. It is very soft, I would say. It's getting a few spikes here and there. So even if we go for retail level counts, trade counts over here, as we see in the 0 to 1K range.
Hold on, producers. I think we had producers. I think we had some charts up. Let's bring those back up. Yeah, and Benjamin, can you actually just, before you go through the data itself, can you just walk us through what we're looking at here?
Sure. So in Panda Terminal, what we can do is we can also look at trade flow data, right? So when we go for BTC USDT spot, and when we go for trade counts in a specific range, let's say between $0 to $1,000 sizes, $10,000 to $100,000 sizes, and 1 million to 10 million sizes. What I observe is that the big whale movements happened in the 68 to 67K zone, after which they've gone completely silent. And when we boil down to even retail in the 0 to 100, 0 to 1K zone, it is still very muted, like except that one spike that we saw for the past 2 days, and that is what we also see in the price action, right? It's just been sideways. It's just been sideways. There is an argument that is good because it can result in a huge consolidation and pump. I have a counter argument to that over here. If you see on the right side, we have the trades list that is live, and it is filtered based on a minimum order size as 10K. Basically, it's flat. You can see that it's just not moving. The number of orders, a trade above 10K basically happened like 25 seconds ago. So it's very muted. So it seems like a lot of algorithms or traders are not buying it. And since we also do market making, when our market making algorithms are running, we are also seeing how difficult it is to get some fills. So despite the ETF flows, the massive ETF flows that we have seen the past 2 days, it's somewhat not converting into the breakout that we thought we would be seeing. And the sell walls being too strong and just holding up the 72K area is not helping. So it seems to me that we probably go back down to 69K and do a retest, and we have to see where it goes from there. Because as when I go for CVD and look at the same thing, it looks not so bad. Whales who bought, they're still holding when it comes to both spot and futures. The blue line over here you see are basically the whale CVD, and they are holding. So it's not that bad. It's just that nothing else is happening after that. So it's still in a consolidation, and in lower time frame, it's neither bullish nor bearish. So I would rather bet on a correction first.
So we're kind of in this no man's land. You're not really seeing the market make a decisive move from a trading desk perspective. What would you like to see to invalidate this idea that, sell and may go away? That, is it really just, I'm looking a little fuzzy today. Is it really just those sells or those buys under 10K have to really pick up? Benjamin, you still with us? Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to him. Okay. So JJ, I want to come back to you and ask this kind of a similar question I was asking before. The technical setups all look really strong. Usually we also like to look at perps. We're also looking at the options market to give us some kind of indication. Are all those kind of riding the wave saying, hey, this is absolutely going higher?
Yeah, you see it's kind of exactly what Benjamin was alluding to, is that there's a bit of caution here, right? In that we had this massive rally towards the end of May and everybody got extremely bullish, and then we fell back into range and chopped, right? So I think we have a bit of PTSD playing out here where people are still reluctant to believe the breakout. And I think that when it does eventually happen, once we do see that 72K wall break, it's going to accelerate pretty rapidly from there. Like everybody that's sidelined now or kind of looking at this with an eye of caution will all of a sudden rush in, and that's how you kind of get those parabolic breaks. Is everybody's not fully allocated, and then all of a sudden they need to be fully allocated. Maybe that's paired with a dovish FOMC or a low CPI print, whatever the catalyst could be. I could see it accelerating rather quickly from here. But in the meantime, it's like, do we actually come back and do we chop again? And it seems like that the market's kind of, everybody has this same thought in mind where everybody's been burned so many times over the past month or so trying to catch the breakout over 70K. Then now that it's finally happened, there's a bit, everybody's kind of weary of it, right? And that we have everything that you would look for. Like we have these massive ETF inflows, Bitcoin's accepted over 70K. It didn't just break above it, right? Like now we've had multiple days of price having daily closes above 70K, which is increasingly bullish. So everything's lining up. We're just waiting for that really somebody to step on the bid and accelerate it to push it up over this resistance level. And either those sell walls get eaten through or they get taken down, and that'll allow price to expand. But as you look at this, like everybody's looking at the same thing, algorithms, traders, etc. They see these massive sell walls here, and you don't want to be somebody else's exit liquidity by buying into it only for it to revert and chop the way it did back in late May. So the market's just kind of at a standoff here, where you have a lot of sellers making themselves clear in the books here. And until they remove those walls or it's ultimately eaten through, price is going to be a bit stagnant. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to crash or anything, but it could conceivably go back to 69, 68.5K. And that's still a bullish structure, right? Like,
Yes.
but if you're trading on high leverage, you would get wiped out. So the
Right.
market, it seems a bit cautious here.
Yeah, the market's ready to punish those who want to go in with 100x leverage or 200x, whatever it was that was added.
It always is.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of months ago. But okay, so everything is bullish. You're saying the market is feeling, perhaps traders are feeling a little bit of this PTSD and able to just accept that this may be ready to go higher. Let's talk about what happens when it finally breaks and how to position for that maybe a little bit. How do you actually start to think about what this would look like? You mentioned 80K. I imagine at that point we're in price discovery mode, right? We don't really have a map to tell us exactly how high it's going to go and how quickly it's going to go. If it gets 80K, what do you expect is the next move? Is it a consolidation back to 70K? Are you expecting it to run, past that even hotter into the 90s? What does that look like? And what would you expect to see from a profile perspective, either on volume, perhaps on options?
I think you would see a sudden surge in spot volumes here. So you see it's kind of been a very low volume on Coinbase spot here, comparatively to like the move we saw here in February and March when it really went parabolic. You saw massive spot volumes driving it, particularly on Coinbase. So I would imagine something similar. You'd see these large buy volumes come in, and that would really be what drives us up to 80K. And at that point, maybe you get a frothy rally driven by perps that drives it up to 85, 90. But I think we'd probably hit some resistance around there. If not 80K directly, then most likely around 90. I don't think it's going to teleport directly to 100 without retesting the 70s at some level beforehand. So I think that's probably the top for the next few months. If we do get this breakout, is somewhere in that 85 to 90K range, come back down, consolidate around 75 to 80, and that would prepare the leg higher for 100 later in the year.
So really what you're looking for in order for us to even get higher than that is really the spot volume has to return in big numbers, particularly on Coinbase, to really demonstrate that we're seeing a lot of fresh new demand come in that can really teleport us higher.
Yeah, that's the signal that it's real, right? Like at any time you see an all-time high break, it's always driven by high spot volumes, particularly on Coinbase. And we've seen a lot of ETF inflows, but we haven't seen that massive buy volume on Coinbase register yet. So it seems like that might be what the market's waiting for. And typically what follows that is perp buying as well. So you kind of have both things rolling at the same time. You add into that, people start getting bullish on options. So you have gamma effects. Like it just creates this flywheel or snowball effect where things just get increasingly bullish. And that's how you get these parabolic moves where everybody's buying all at the same time. And it just turns into a one-way market to the upside.
So I'm gonna bring back Benjamin in a moment, and Benjamin, make sure to have your screen share with the producers because they may need that. Ooh, it looks like I ate something bad last night. JJ, last question for you: if we're trying to get to that 100K marker, which everyone's asking for, is it going to happen in 2024? Do we need record volumes coming in on Coinbase to propel us, or given the market structure you're seeing from an options perps, knowing that the ETFs are coming in, can we just see an uptick? And does that take us up to that 100K?
I think you would need to see considerable spot volumes, particularly on Coinbase for that kind of move. And I don't think it'll happen prior to the election. I think the market will probably be weary of any kind of massive rally ahead of that until it gets a definitive green light that, hey, things are bullish and whatever regime is going to embrace crypto. I think that's really what it wants. And that could be the fuel that sends it to 100K possibly in December or January of next year.
Okay. So not necessarily 2024, maybe gets it, but after the election cycle in the United States, which I think it was something Mike Novogratz said a while back when we actually covered on the show.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody's thinking about it and cautious about that, you probably won't see the 100K break until after. But likewise, if everybody agrees that it's a bullish narrative and it should go to 100K, it'll go to 100K.
Benjamin, you back with us? Oh, the silence is something. Benjamin, you here? We're missing your voice. The tenor of
Benjamin.
All right. Well, I blame Google for everything, including my marriage woes. Okay, let's answer the question I think I was asking at the very end. So what you're not seeing right now is the 10K bids below that. And I think the final question I had for you was, what would you like to see start to materialize in those flows that would give you and say, finally, yeah, sell in May is invalidated. I'm ready to embrace the summer trading
We
season.
need to see Coinbase premium. I don't believe that we will start running without a Coinbase premium. Because even the pump that we had, somewhat in the mid of May, it was seeing at least a few days of premium, and price ran up. Right now, the problem is we are seeing perps are rallying, than spot. So there is a bit of a FOMO factor here in futures. People are piling up their positions because everybody thinks that ETF flows are good and we are going to run up hard, which may be true, but I'm just looking more at it in a short-term level. Yeah, it. I think we still need the DXY to break down, man. I think that is holding up a lot. I don't think they're moving up before that.
Well,
Yeah.
I do want to get some more insight on the Dixie, but before we do that, before we get into that, I want to get your same take that I asked for JJ. JJ laid out his scenario for 100K Bitcoin in 2024, which it sounds like it's very low odds that it's actually happening this year. He's waiting to see similar things. He's looking for spot volume coming in on Coinbase, has to be considerable. Then you're going to see a wave of activity. I'm assuming that I also suggest the ETFs have to remain strong. Do you have the same setup in your mind? How likely is it that those things happen and we're able to see 100K this year?
If we see more stablecoin supply also come in, more stablecoin minting happens, then I think we can be very confident of 100K happen this year. I still think in Q4 we could see something like that, but we have to, it's politics. This year is all about politics.
It's either the FOMC or it's the politicians taking us for a ride. Well, hopefully at some point that changes, but we'll see. Okay, so I think you guys have laid out your path for the way this looks right now. Structurally, everything looks bullish except for the fact we don't have the fundamental flows coming in, which I think is a little bit of something to be cautious about. But if the perps continue to run, the ETFs continue to run, this could run higher. I think JJ's laid out that case. I want to cover a little bit on the outside forces and get that take going into the Dixie, talking a little bit about rates coming down globally and what that might mean for global liquidity, and then talk a little bit about positioning in this no man's land, if you will, where we don't actually have strong conviction for some of the reason Benjamin just said. Before I do that, I want to give a shout out to everybody here. I see a few more people in here. I think Huddle Tight, I think I see here, and G-Man. Oh, G-Man says 100,000 if Trump gets in. We will see, my friend. We will see. But definitely welcome to everybody. Love to see you here. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button. Share this wherever you're having a conversation about crypto, be it Telegram, be it Discord, be it at the dinner table where you're telling your grandma for the 50th time that she should be buying some spots of ETH and definitely some of those soul meme coins, because that's what I'm pitching to my Nana. So JJ, I want to bring it back to you. Talk a little bit about Dixie. We've been ranging between this 104 to 105 now for what seems like forever. We've talked about the fact that it needs to break. Benjamin was talking about the fact that is going, when that breaks, that's when we could finally see some really risk on sentiment. How close is that?
It's coming. I think it's just a matter of when, not if. Like, you see this technical, everything's kind of giving way. We have that summer seasonality effect. It's just waiting for the final nail in the coffin, be that the jobs print tomorrow, CPI next week, or ultimately FOMC. But I think one of those three, I think we'll probably see some choppy price action. You see maybe a couple wicks. Maybe it goes back to like this 104.70 region at some point, but I think ultimately it's going to flush down below 104 by the end of July. And I think that's really the green light that the market's waiting for, is that, hey, the peak dollars behind us, firmly in a downtrend, en route to 100, and that will pave the way for Bitcoin's breakout above all-time highs. But again, it's the same thing as we were discussing before. Trying to time that exact moment of parabola is never easy. It takes a lot of focus, and I think it's coming. It's just, is it today? Is it next week? Is it a month from now? That's going to be the hard part. So if you're holding spot, I think you're well positioned for continued upside here, but be careful with perps, because I think it's going to be a turbulent ride to eventually breaking out above 72K. But looking at the Dixie, it's on life support right now. It's fading fast, right? Came up and retested the 200-day yesterday and failed, got rejected pretty harshly. And now we see it fading back towards that 104 range. We'll have to see how the coming week goes.
I do want to ask a question to everyone who's listening to this, either live or after the show. Let us know if you're trading perps, and if you are, what positions you're taking right now, long, short, or otherwise. Very curious, because I think we've been very cautious on this show, knowing, again, we're in this no man's land. We're waiting for that strong conviction, the Dixie to break down, the Coinbase volumes to really kick in. We haven't seen that yet. So I think, JJ, your word of caution is exactly that. You could get flushed out very easily in this kind of environment. And so I'm curious what positions people are taking and how they're protecting their portfolio. Okay, so you're saying you continue to expect this to break down. I think you talked before the show a little bit about maybe seeing an impulse higher, maybe next week or the next couple of weeks before we start to see the final run down.
Yeah, and there's part of me that wonders too, like maybe this does happen tomorrow, because if everybody's waiting on next week, typically the way the market moves is that it's not going to give you that opportunity, right? Like it's had this bullish structure, it's consolidating below resistance. Maybe we do get a lower jobs print tomorrow. Dixie falls off the cliff and Bitcoin just accelerates above 72K, leaves everybody on the sidelines. It's certainly a possibility here. And the only reason why I'm thinking that is because look at this structure on the daily chart. Like this is extremely bullish, right? Like it just looks like it wants to expand immediately from here. So all it's waiting for is that 72K wall to be moved. And that could be as soon as tomorrow, I believe.
I want to get your guys' perspective on just general trader sentiment rather than like the fundamental analysis of what's coming out from the central banks. We saw this morning the European Central Bank just cut rates by 0.25%, now sitting at 3.75%. I think yesterday Canada came out. They reduced their rates as well by 0.25%. There's a general sense that obviously while the Fed is continuing to say a wait and see data-driven approach, that the rest of the markets, including China, the ones I just mentioned, are saying we're going to bring down rates, and there's various narratives for that. How do you think that is positioning in people's minds? Benjamin, I'll ask you, if you're looking at this without having sort of the Ben Lilly view on actually getting strictly into rates, looking at this more from an economics perspective, from a trader's point of view, are you just now expecting that the Fed has to drop rates, it's going to drop rates, and that means that you can expect that and you can start trading for it? Oh, Benjamin, are you with us? We may have lost you.
Oh, myself.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought you were asking.
No. Yeah. So let me rephrase. Okay. Let me just repeat that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. If you heard it, you can answer. Go for it.
No. I understood the question. I thought I understood the question. I thought it was JJ's turn. So I do think there is a sentiment that rates are going to be cut sooner or later. It's coming. Maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, but it's coming. Probably going to be the last one to cut it, but it's going to come. And that sentiment is quite visible. I talk to people around here as well that it's going to happen. So might as well position for it. So probably they will move in a fat share of their funds when it actually happens. But people are positioning for this.
Well, I want to come back to what you showed us with the trade flows not being there to really give you the sense that it's, to invalidate sell in May and go away. How do you reconcile those two things, knowing that people are starting to feel bullish?
Trade base, what we are looking at in the short term, it doesn't matter. It's not what I'm getting at. But in general, about the rate cuts and the perception, and ever since 1.5 months ago, I think somewhat during early April, when ECB started talking about cutting rates, when UK started talking about cutting rates, positioning started happening from then on with respect to spot, buying up a small amount of spot holdings and just holding it through. So this sentiment already has begun. This week, whether they are doing or not is a different question. So I don't think that much amount of positioning is happening right now for that. Everybody is right now still waiting for this breakout. And then a major FOMO might come in on spot at that point. But right now, it's only the futures traders who are doing a lot of FOMO positioning. So I want to bring it back to you, JJ. I mean, Benjamin just laid out the case that 3 to 4 months out, people are looking at this. They are expecting this to happen. You've often said the thing that everyone is expecting to happen doesn't happen.
How do you think traders are going about this and how they're positioning themselves? If you just think about from a sentiment perspective that this is going to be cut.
I still see a bit of caution in the market. Like we look at these December rate cut futures, and we can see how high they were in January when the market was expecting whatever it was, 6 cuts or something, and it got a bit over its skis, right? But obviously, just to explain this again, when this chart moves up, that's an indication of lower rates. So when this is at 100, that's an effective 0% futures rate that the options market's pricing in from Fed futures, and when it's at say 95, that's an indication of 5% rates. So we see it right or basically where we are now. I think this is pricing in maybe 1 cut for the end of the year. So if that dot plot comes out next week and it's extremely dovish, it's not priced in at all right now. And you could see this chart skyrocket, which ultimately would lead to a much weaker Dixie. And I think the knock-on effects of that it would have on risk markets. This is kind of Ben's melt-up theory, if you're familiar with that from a couple of years ago. He wrote a nice piece called Macro Cycles on this. But when we pull up the inverse correlation here, like you could see when these interest rate futures move up, Dixie moves down. And I think next week we could see a massive repricing here where these shoot up to the upside and ultimately Dixie falls off the cliff. And that could ultimately be our fuel for the breakout. So I don't think that there's a whole lot of risk. I think the risk is to the upside currently in markets, in that people may be under allocated ahead of this due to how choppy this year's been. Like everybody thinks rate cuts coming, and then we get a few months of high inflation data. They all got priced out, and now we could see that pendulum swing back again in the market, turn uber bullish once again.
Okay, so the sentiment I'm getting from you guys is that the market seems to be talking about the fact they're expecting these rate cuts to happen. The timing of it is still unknown. I think, JJ, you're just pointing out, if you look at this, the data, the market hasn't really committed to positioning itself. Once that does happen, we'll see that data change on what you just shared. But Benjamin, as you just pointed out, a lot of people are thinking about that and maybe starting to move into position. So I think from an outside forces perspective, everything is continuing to look like it's moving in the risk on appetite that would be fuel for this for crypto at large. We have to see it play out, and we have to see it actually have the final conviction, if you will. I think with that, though, it's time to talk a little bit about positioning. I want to get your guys' takes on, we had someone share here, Josel, hopefully I said your name correctly, gave a position that they're looking at from a perpetuals perspective. I want to talk a little bit about options, thinking a little bit about maybe keeping some dry powder and when you would actually deploy if you're looking at this market right now. But before we do that, I do want to give a shout out to CoinCall. CoinCall is the exchange that JJ's always highlighting when he talks about his options. It's a new exchange, it's got a very elegant interface, competitive fees, and it's a great place to start that options journey if that's something you're looking into. And hey, we've talked offline and during this show about the feeling of complexity with options. JJ, I think, has laid out the best case possible for why it's something to look at just in terms of the risk reward is so favorable. But hey, we get it. It's a complex thing to look at. That's why we put out all the content that JJ does around education. We just had an AMA, and we're looking at doing more of that. If you're interested in some of that and you really want to understand why it's a better risk reward, let us know in the comments, and definitely be liking and subscribing to this channel, because we're going to be putting out more of that to help you guys figure out how to put this into your strategy. But definitely, in order to do that, you're going to want to sign up with CoinCall with the link in the description. So JJ, I want to come back to you and talk a little bit about that. So in terms of options, what are you looking at the market right now? What is it saying? I don't think anything's changed on the large expiration that's happening at the end of this month, and the volumes being much lower as you go into the rest of the year. Are you seeing plays right now that have high conviction, or is this just, you're having to force yourself into find something if you want to trade?
Yeah, there's nothing high conviction right now, unless you're really expecting that breakout to come within the next couple of days. So if we look at the Bitcoin implied volatility index, we still see it's relatively low. Basically, I pointed this out on Twitter earlier in the week, and that the last time Bitcoin broke over 70K back in May, when it went from 60K to 72K in a few days, we saw this shoot up to about 65, and it's not really having the same reaction right now. So this is telling you the options market's not really believing in this rally. Just kind of the same theme as we were discussing earlier. Everybody's a bit cautious right now, right? Nobody wants to rush into position only for it to chop backwards again. And it seems like that's what's being priced into the options market now. If we look at the IVs here, we see June is still very low, and it's pretty low scores relative to Bitcoin's ability to move throughout December even. Like Bitcoin's typically a 70 to 100 vol asset in a bull market, and we see there's not a whole lot of volatility being priced in right now. It's kind of still remains a one-way market of mostly volatility sellers rather than volatility buyers. So I think if you're looking at this from an options perspective, wondering what positions to take, I still think, I mean, these are expensive. Just to caveat that, if you look at the December calls, $13,000 for an 80K call. So your break-even price is 93,000. So you're really expecting a massive move to the upside or a move that brings volatility surging. And I think above 72K, an all-time high break, that's when you would see that rush demand for optionality. And you could see these calls double in that scenario. Like Bitcoin doesn't even have to go to 80K. I think if it would go to 77K, you could see these calls conceivably double, if not more, in that kind of scenario. So that's one option. If you're looking at shorter dated stuff, I think there's plays available, but it's all dependent on that breakout. And I do think you would probably want to wait to see how the next couple days go, because if you do get a washout to 69K, your risk reward is going to be so much greater at that point. So anything beyond the all-time highs, right? Like this would be an attractive level if you're looking at June or July, somewhere above 74K, if you're really expecting that breakout, because the IV is going to shoot up so much on an all-time high break. You could see that implied volatility index run back to 70 in short order, similar to what we saw in February and March when it just went parabolic. That's the kind of thing that happens after an all-time high break. So you want to be prepared to position yourself for that. So maybe you buy, say, one June or July call now and have a plan to average down if we do fall below 69K in the coming week.
We just made the case on this show that while we're seeing a lot of signals that this is very bullish, we're expecting this to run hotter and higher, we still haven't seen the final conviction. So from that perspective, even if we don't see a real rundown to 69K and then support before we see a blast off, until we see the Dixie breakdown, until we see the markets kind of say, hey, we know that we're risk on, rates are kind of being priced in, is the, I guess, the lower risk, higher reward play is to wait?
Yeah, it's to wait. But the thing about options is if you wait for that, if you wait to see the spot volumes and price accepting above 72K, the price of these will go up so rapidly that you won't be able to get entry. So it's the risk reward of options is you have to position yourself early to make money. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing and you're going to end up losing a lot of money. So you always have to have that factor in mind that, hey, like what are the IVs saying now? And are you chasing the IV once that move finally happens? And you want to be putting yourself in a position where you could sell when that IV ultimately goes parabolic rather than chasing it. So options, it's a bit like 3D chess, right? Like you have to kind of see all the different ways that price could move from here and start thinking it through and say, okay, if we start to accept above 71.5, say, if we start to gain that momentum, that might be a spot where you want to start buying because the IVs haven't really kicked yet, but it looks like that 72K wall may be about to break. Or if you see these walls start to shift, maybe they start to dissipate, but the IVs haven't picked up yet. You have to be rather precise with your timing of getting into those trades. You want to really front run that. But ultimately, like if we do see a washout back to 69K, the IVs are going to dump and you'll be able to get entries at a fraction of the cost as you would now for those call options.
I want to take this thinking. That's a good breakdown for the I guess how someone needs to be thinking about how to position and when to position in options from a Bitcoin perspective. There's the mindset as well that says, okay, when Bitcoin runs, then Ethereum's going to run, then the rest of the market's going to run. So maybe when Bitcoin starts running, I can get into some Ethereum options, expecting that to run afterwards. Is that correct thinking? Is that error-prone thinking with the options market with how it's structured right now?
I think what you would see is likely Bitcoin lead. So my kind of mental map of this is Bitcoin would likely lead on a break above all-time highs. I think Ethereum would go up as well, but you'd see Bitcoin outpace. But the thing is too, is that Bitcoin's IV and Ethereum's IV would likely move in tandem. So you could still get more favorable risk rewards on the Ethereum calls. Like if you do say you miss that breakout above 74K, ETH is possibly above 4K. Maybe you would look at some out of the money ETH calls, expecting it to run, say a month or so after Bitcoin cools down. And you could get those at a relatively cheap basis versus the Bitcoin calls, knowing that Ethereum hasn't made its real move yet. Like what we typically see is, say, Bitcoin runs to 80K, or Ethereum goes to 4.2 to 4.5. Once Bitcoin cools down and consolidates somewhere in the 80 range or so, then maybe we could see that Ethereum move to 5K plus. So you might be looking at 5K calls dated for a month or two beyond that, expecting that move to happen later, and it's not necessarily priced in at the same volatility level. But it's all path dependent, so it's very theoretical what we're discussing here. It depends on what the IV is showing at that time, right? It's never a set path.
Well, I think though what you've highlighted is that it's not the traditional chain that I just discussed, right? With Bitcoin moves, then Ethereum, then the alts. That doesn't necessarily happen, as you said. The term structure could actually move in tandem, which would make those Ethereum options just as expensive as Bitcoin options, even if Ethereum hasn't made its move yet.
If not more, like Ethereum's IVs, it tends to be higher. It's a higher volatility asset, like we see it here. It's currently trading at 67, the ETH 30-day volatility index, and Bitcoin's only at 55. So right now, Ethereum, due to that massive move that we saw 2 weeks ago, that really kicked up the ETH IV scores. So right now, their options are a bit more expensive than Bitcoin's currently. And I think we might see a flippening there on an all-time high break of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin's IV outpaces Ethereum.
Got it. Okay. I did have a question here coming, and there's a couple of comments, guys. I appreciate you guys sharing sort of your positioning and how you're thinking about your perpetuals. Mr. Dan says, can you explain the low volatility and low forward volume for June 9th is 25%? I haven't looked at the information. Have either of you been looking at the low volatility and the forward volume and have a perspective?
So that's for this Friday. And I think the factors here is what we were discussing. The market's very cautious. It doesn't believe that 72K wall is going to break this week. It's more favoring chop. So what you see here, like as you look at these calls, they're still expensive, but relative to a move Bitcoin could make, right? Like conceivably, say they remove that 72K wall today, we go to 75K tomorrow. This 72K call would be worth $3,000 plus, but it's only trading at 900 right now. And I think that's a factor of more people being willing to sell volatility at this level. Like they're looking at it saying, hey, I think Bitcoin's going to chop between 69 and 71K for the next few days. I could sell this, collect this volatility premium, and you haven't seen a rush demand for options. I think that rush demand for options will come in above 72K, and then you get some gamma effects, and that could potentially kick us up to all-time highs from there. But we haven't seen it yet, and that's due in large part to the sell wall at 72K, is that nobody is buying a 72K call because it seems very unlikely that we move past these sell walls that you see here in the next day or two.
Very unlikely. It's something always funny to hear in the crypto communities. We have a couple of positions here that have been shared. Positioning long spot, long some perps, overall delta around 1.2, but keep on opening them, closing my perps positions as I change my mind as to BTC breaking all-time high shortly or not. Good perspective. Adrian, last sizable futures long on the break of 45K back in February. Wow. Hopefully you netted some nice profits on that one.
It's enough to take a year off.
Yeah, exactly. It's time to touch some grass, hang out at your villa. Other than that, picked up during summer 22 through March of 23. So definitely it sounds like some interesting positions people are kind of moving out of, definitely taking some risk off the table as appropriate. So that's good to hear. Definitely how people are thinking about the market. Benjamin, I want to bring it back to you. When you hear sort of these views on maybe how some of the people here are trading their perpetuals, you've talked many times about spot positions that you're maybe taking in some high risk, high reward coins. We've talked about your BTC positions, playing perps. What are you thinking about right now? You've talked, you've been in the camp of sell and man, go away. Your conviction isn't quite there, but you're not denying the ETFs. Are you now starting to look at some positions a little bit more favorably with a little bit more interest? And if so, what are they?
So one of the trades that I took on spot side quite recently this week was BNB, because BNB has been consolidating for 2 months now in a sideways range, and it broke out. So I bought the breakout, and now I've been looking at, okay, I should have taken up some perp positions as well. So I've been constantly tracking to grab some in over there. But I think if BNB continues to run, then some shitcoins and BSC ecosystem could get a run as well. But honestly, this is a beautiful breakout. You see on the daily level, I'm showing in the chart. was a beautiful pennant for nearly 2 months, and it broke out. So this is the kind of strength you want to see with BTC if it is breaking out. That's the thing I'm struggling. It's like, well, it would be nice to see some good strength come in. Like, of course, BNB did not have that amount of sell walls because I was tracking it. It wasn't that crazy, but BTC does have it. So we have to wait and see based on what JJ is also thinking. But this is a beautiful breakout. It's a very clean breakout. If it comes for a retest somewhere in this area, 680 or 675, it's a great buy. It's making new all-time highs. Simple as that.
It's the Mona Lisa breakouts. It's Da Vinci
it's a
perfection.
Beautiful breakout.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna frame that on my wall.
And it is on price discovery. I mean, for all the shit that CZ took for 2.5 years from everybody who lost on FTX, and look what's happening. He'll be out from the prison in 4 months, and he's going to be one of the richest people on earth.
He's gonna let it up.
Well, that's the American judicial system. That's usually how it works. Either you're in there forever or you're out and rich. Okay, so you've looked at some of this. I think Thomas just mentioned BNB alts are starting to run also. So they're if you've got some exposure there, you probably have been able to pick up some profits. I guess, Benjamin, you mentioned you're looking at perps. You took a spot position in this on the breakout. You're looking at some perp positions. Are you looking at going further down the risk curve in the BNB environment ecosystem? I know you've talked about base in the past as well, which continues to be on the research mode. Anything else kind of caught your attention?
No, nothing too exciting right now. In fact, it's a much boring market when it comes to innovation right now. So just taking it a little light. A lot of projects should hopefully be launching in a few months. So we'll probably see some more. I think basically nobody is positioned for the summer in one way with respect to product launches and so on. Because summer is never a greater time for that, except the 2020 summer, where we saw all this DeFi stuff go crazy. And then the 2021 July to August NFT season. If you look back, summers are never a great time. It doesn't work out. From June to September, it's just shit. So I don't think most people are positioned for it with respect to staying up and trading shit coins or issuing more meme coins. And that's why we saw also many meme coins start to bleed. The meme coin market cap was bleeding a little bit for the past few weeks, if you have seen. That being said, Total 3 looks great. I've been posting in Oculus for past few days as well. The Total 3 looks great, and that could result in a run, but it could just chop around and go sideways much longer. Either way, what we know is BNB is breaking out and it's making new all-time highs. Maybe it gets to 1,000 much before anything else gets to a very good all-time high. And that's still fine,
Yeah. Well, I was going to share with that. I think you're pointing out the fact that don't be afraid to take profits in these positions. Again, none of this is financial advice. We're not financial advisors, but I think just from a mode of successful traders, if you see their pattern, they will take profits. They're not afraid to take profits. In fact, we were talking to our producer offline before about that, about just when you've got a position that's run hot, it's made something, don't be afraid to take that out, be able to reinvest it at a later point. And particularly given the reasons that we just shared earlier in the show, we don't have a crystal ball of where this is going. We still don't have that full conviction that this is definitely going to run higher. Once you do, then perhaps you can keep some of those positions open a little bit more, but don't be surprised if they come back down. I think with that though, guys, we are going to wrap up today's live show. Ben Lilly put out on X that this may in fact be our last live stream on YouTube, but don't worry. That doesn't mean that you can't continue to see a live show, because we're working very hard with our producers who we always like to blame, but in fact, they're doing amazing work behind the scenes to get the new studio set up, to get our new rig set up so that everything looks clean. It's a new place for you to come visit and interact with us a little bit more, perhaps like the AMA style that we did a couple of weeks back. So you can get all this alpha, engage with us, and continue to see a great show. So with that, definitely be sure to follow us on X, follow us here on YouTube, so you're able to see it. And we'll post on the social here so you can be aware of when that's coming out. You can also follow the JLabs Discord on not Discord, the Telegram channel, so you can be made aware. There's obviously a variety of places we'll be announcing this, but definitely keep us on notifications so that you're aware when that actually happens, and you can start joining us in the next space. We're really excited to bring it to you again. This is all about trying to give you the best experience to be the best trader out there, become the sophisticated trader, not the novice that's becoming exit liquidity. And so, JJ, Benjamin, I want to say thank you. Great show as always. Everyone in the chats, thank you for sharing your ideas, your questions. We hope to see you back very, very, very soon. Maybe next week with some more live shows here on YouTube or in the new studio. More to come there. But with that, I'll leave you with my PSA. Have some dry powder. Those opportunities are coming. This is Marconi White signing off.